Today I'm going to approach to major literature periods. This is for the British literature class in the fourth year. Firstly, I'd like to highlight two major forces that shapes literary theories throughout the ages. At the bottom of the screen, you can see that during the classical Renaissance and Romanticism, nature, beauty, subjectivity, and emotions were themes that were very applied into literature works. On the other hand, on the top of the screen, we can see that reason, logic, structure, objectivity, and science uh, were basically predominant during the medieval, Neoclassicism, the Victorian Modernism, and of course during the postmodernism period. And where are we heading to? As you can see on the right side of the screen, we don't really know where are the major work of literature are going to head in the near future. Continue. I'm going to start off with the classical period. During this period, as you know, most of the writings were based on myths and beliefs, as well as the transmission of this literature were mostly oral. And we can see this in these examples like the Egyptians writings, the Gilgamesh, story, which is set in which is nowadays Iran, Homer's Iliad, for example, and as well as fundamental religious texts like the Torah, the Bible, and the Bhagavad Gita. And also, since we're talking about myths, we have fables, Greek dramas, and most of these writing were centered on royalty. As we move on, we're going to focus now on the medieval period. During this period, it's interesting that most of the writing were done in Latin, since Latin was the language of the power. Since the Roman Empire expanded and conquered many parts of the world, and the language was transmitted um, alongside the regions they were conquering. And we have during this period Beowulf, for example, which tell the story of its hero and its battle against the beast Grendel. It's interesting that during this period, Christian morality was a strong influence in most of the works, and also chivalry code. We have some good example of the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer and chivalry with Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, as well as other works like La Mort d'Arthur, which basically approach on chivalry code during this period. It's also important to emphasize that in this time, Old English and Middle English started to be written and used like they were in Geoffrey Chaucer. However, it would be very difficult for us to understand this English since it um, it was at its very early forms, which varied completely from the modern English that we have nowadays. And then we have the Renaissance period, which goes from some some scholars states that it started in during the 1550 and goes till the 1650. During this period, as we know, the arts rebirth in the war. That's why it's called Renaissance, which in English means rebirth. Um, this rebirth was basically seen in different form of arts, like in literature, music, architecture, and other fields of human knowledge. Um, it's interesting that classic myth and heroes were also highlighted in during the Renaissance in the different novels, works, short stories, and poems. And authors search for a place for human in a changing world. Also, it could be seen that there was a constant search for free expression. And during this period emerged the novel. And we have many, many works. I just try to summarize here The Passioner Shepherd to His Love, for example, Sir Walter Raleigh, The Nymph's Reply to the Shepherd, and we have Utopia from Sir Thomas More. And of course, Shakespeare's work. Shakespeare wrote many works that still last nowadays, and he is also known as one of the greatest English writer. Um, we also have some other works like Pilgrim Progress and Meditation 17 from John Donne and John Bunyan. Let's continue with Neoclassicism, which go from the 1650 to the 1800. And during this period, basically, science was a matter of approach. Science can help understand nature. That was the perception that writers and intellectuals had on this period. It's also called the Age of Enlightenment because many intellectuals, many scholars started doing discoveries and learning more about nature and humans beings. It's also the period of restoration in England, and most of the world developed order, accuracy, and structure. It was a period of religious and solace and exploration since England was expanding its power all around the world. And this is also reflected in the different works like Robinson Crusoe, Gulliver's Travel, Paradise Lost from John Milton. And also we have the first English dictionary from this period, which was written by Samuel Johnson, as well as other works that reflected these periods basically. Then we have the Romanticism, which go from the 1800 to the 1850. During this period, writers and the society in general try to explore and understand life in a different way. So nature was mysterious for the authors, and mortality and mutability was a theme that was approached in a different world, and it could be seen in novels, in poetry, in drama, in different kinds of literature. It was also the period to search for the sublime beauty, and most of the work reflected personal emotion and experience. It's important to highlight that during this period, it was developed the Gothic style on the Gothic literature, which was reflected in architecture and other form of literature. And we have, for example, authors from this period: William Wordsworth, Price and Prejudice, um, from Jane Austen, um, Lord Byron. We have Percy Bysshe Shelley and Emily Brown with Wuthering Heights, which were great works that reflected these features of literature. As we move on now, in the 1850 till the 1900, it was known as the Victorian Era. During this period, England experimented an exponential growth, and also industrialization was a matter of the society, and also respectability. In during this period, it was Britain great expectation from Charles Dickens, as well as um, other literary works like My Last Duchess, Tess of Other Bells, and Jane Eyre from Charlotte Bronte. The Victorian era meant an important um, advance in many fields of the society. which also was reflected in literature as well. Now we're going to approach the modernism, which basically go, according to some authors, from the 1900 to 1945. And the main features of this period are the practical experimentation that was exploring the human beings and the people, and they try to empower humans, and there were new ways of reaching the same end, as well as many authors explored introspection, like Freud, for example, in psychology. The nihilism also was a form of presenting philosophical works as well as literature, and it was clearly a period of rejection of the past. And during this period, we have very prominent writers like T.S. Eliot, James Joyce with Arabic, Joseph Conrad. We have Virginia Woolf, Elsa Pound, and Scott Fitzgerald with The Great Gatsby, as many other works that uh, were from this period. And then we have the postmodernism, which, according to some authors, goes from 1945 until 1989, and some intellectual states that we are still living in a postmodernism, and others say we are in a postmodernist period. And this um, era is had two moments that basically marked the period. First was the World War, where in Germany, when many Jews were killed, millions of them, innocent people were killed, and it's a period where people saw changes and very um, high impact events that changed the society, as the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima by the American forces. This period is known as the disillusionment period, because as since most of the war saw the United States, England, German, and as the good guy that protected the war and fought the bad guys, suddenly turn becoming the bad guys, and they start invading countries, bombing and killing innocent people. Um, so there was no single truth for this period. There were parodies and pastiches, and the war does not offer answers to the people. And during this period, we could see a lot of metafictional writing and boundaries crossed. And, and in this period, we have writers, great writers like Arthur Miller, Samuel Barclay, and Arthur Charles Clarke, who was the first science fiction writer from this period, and James Joyce also with Ulysses, and Graham Greene with a shocking accident. Now let's talk about the postmodernism, which some authors state that we are living in this period, and I would like to approach that this go from 1989 on. And in this period, we are living a changing world with increased and constant fear. We have a lot of international terrorism. We have extreme and ultra right nationalism and authoritarianism, like Donald Trump in the United States, Bolsonaro in Brazil, and Duterte in Asia. We have a lot of populism and conservative in politics, which change the view and how the people see politics, and it's also it's also being experimented a constant threat to democracy all around the world with this type with the rise of this type of government. We are also experimenting global pandemic and health threats with COVID-19 and Ebola, for example. It's also important to mention that climate change is a big issue for human beings and global warming for our existence as a humanity. Well, thank you very much. These are some reference for this short presentation. Um, any question you have, you can email or you can reach me, and I will be helping everyone. Thank you and have a good day.